Hello and welcome back to a episode of Dino. As you saw, we are back. I am very excited to be here. It's been a while. I'm very sorry for the late, the tardiness on my part, because I said I guarantee I said the last episode I'd be back soon, and it's been quite a while. But unfortunately, life gets busy and with work. So we're here today, and if you wanted to put up the title card just one more time so I can talk about it, thank you, Justin. Now, this title card, I'm sorry to say, I'm not an artist. I don't know why. I know some people who could have helped me build this, but I didn't. So I had Chat GPT help me. And for once, it actually turned out really well. So today I'm talking about Ice Age animals that were alive during the Ice Age and are still alive during today. So that's kind of like a long-winded way of me saying, hey, I was watching Prehistoric Planet season 3, and they went to Africa, and I saw zebras, and I saw ostriches, and I was like, that's kind of weird. I wonder if those are modern day zebras and ostriches, or if they are different, like relatives. No, they are pretty much modern day. So I spent 4 or 5 days doing a lot of research, and it's wild. So when I go, to me, I think Ice Age, and like the movie, if you want to talk about the movie, you think like woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, and giant ground sloths, and like lots of giant ground sloths, like 35 different species of ground sloth. We think huge animals, and like they're not around today. It's kind of crazy to think that these things were here and now they're just gone. But when you think of like this, there are some animals that are still alive today, which I didn't even think of. Look at wolves, which I'll talk about later. But wolves, like gray wolves, it's a very old species. But it's insane to think some of these things have been around for so long. So I'm very excited to talk about this today. So we're going to talk about animals that lived through the Ice Age that are still around today. They might not be even something crazy, but they are. And the adaptations they have. So some adaptations are called like phantom adaptations that no longer exist because those animals that they adapted to have adaptations for aren't around anymore. So cool. And we're kind of just hop into it. So we're going to get started with, survivors of the Ice Age that didn't even really change. So first up, we're going to talk about ostriches. And I have a picture of I think it's a herd of ostriches first. These are kind of young ostriches. So Struthiocamelus. And I have just a solo picture of an ostrich, which they're really ugly looking animals. Like, look at that sucker. That thing hasn't changed at all. So the lineage of modern day ostriches, which are just called ostrich, show up about millions of years before the Ice Age. And by the time mammoths were roaming ostriches pretty much cracked the code. They were just ostriches. They didn't change. So you have long legs, 2 toes, very quick, explosive speed, and open habitat dominance. They go everywhere, right? Like they move, they go wherever they want. Very nomadic. And this adaptation really helps them to survive. So they ran alongside megafauna and massive predators. Like you think ostriches being preyed on by like all kinds of crazy stuff. There were giant otters in Africa called like hydro something or other. I should have wrote it down. But like these ostriches were like the size of a lion, and like that's crazy to think that these ostriches have seen otters that are the size of lions, like just surviving. So let me look at why didn't they change? They had already optimized, right? Like ostriches they were efficient runners. They had flexible diets. They're omnivores, so they can eat pretty much anything they want. They work in open and dry landscapes because the Ice Age, as it started to kind of like warm back up, I guess even during the height of the Ice Age, forests stopped being forests and became more like grasslands. And that really hurt a lot of species that needed forests. So climate shifted, they were fine. And as the old adage says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have a lot of notes, so I'm going to keep going through these. So next we have zebras. Everyone knows a zebra. The stripy horse. So modern zebras, like the plains zebra, overlapped with saber-toothed tigers, giant buffalo, and even early humans, which is so crazy to me. So the striping pattern had already evolved many, many years before the idea of modern zebra even existed. They were already making herds. The stripes, we think, still helps to confuse predators and to help like flies, because flies, I think, avoid the black but go to the white. Something that would have mattered when a predator, when there's like a predator guild, because there were so many predators in the Ice Age. It's actually kind of crazy. You think of Africa nowadays, you have lions, and you have, I guess, hyenas and cheetahs and leopards, and that's really it. Like wild dogs too, and jackals, but like that's about it. And then you think about like what the Ice Age really had, and you had 5 times the number. You had so many mouths to feed and such a wider amount. So the craziest thing is that they were avoiding us at the time because we were starting to evolve. And when we became dominant, there's a reason why zebras are still here. Like, the mammoths are gone. We wiped the mammoths out. At least we think so. We wiped out most of the bison. Why are zebras here? And it's kind of crazy to think that like they kind of cracked the code and just ran with it. So I mentioned earlier gray wolves as well. I just want to preface that all the pictures I have today are from Pixabay. So Pixabay is this great website where you can kind of get like free pictures that people have put up there for use. So I will say, like, shout out Pixabay because they do so much good work. This is an amazing picture of a gray wolf. So the gray wolf, modern day gray wolf, is crazy to think that it evolved about 300,000 years ago. 300,000 years, that's insane. So Ice Age wolves were a bit larger, but anatomically nearly identical. Same pack, endurance pursuit predators, and territorial behavior. How do you survive? You make a name for yourself, you keep it in there, you just keep going. Wolves made it through the Ice Age. Dire wolves did not. There's a reason behind that, and it's because gray wolves just did better. They were just fantastic. Next, we have the American bison, which is one of my favorite of these things. Like, look at that. Bison are just so crazy. Sorry about my sniffles as well. So, American bison evolved from Ice Age ancestors like Bison antiquus. And that Bison antiquus, I didn't get a picture of it, but it's a huge bison. Giant skull, great big horns. These ones, smaller now, but structurally, still the same. They have the hump, the massive head, and the herd movement. So modern bison in the Pleistocene would not look out of place at all. And the crazy thing is too, that skull, that huge skull, and that big hump of fat on the back, I think it's fat, or I guess it could be a fat storage. It worked, and that's why they're still here today. Next is moose. This is a North American moose. If you look up pictures of North American moose versus European moose, you don't find a lot, unfortunately. So this is kind of this is just a North American moose. It looks like I thought this was hilarious. It looks like he's singing. So moose appeared in the fossil record about 150,000 years ago, and they were already cold adapted browsers. So they had long legs, solitary lifestyles, and massive size. So they're huge. Like, if you think of a moose, like, they are gigantic. Like, I wish I could get a picture of like a moose like next to a car, but they're just so big, and it worked because the stuff they were trying to survive from was also so big. So a full-grown bull moose weighs about 1,500 pounds, and like, maybe a pack of wolves can take down like a sickly one. Maybe something like maybe like 2 cougars. I don't even think that would do it. Like maybe a full-grown grizzly, maybe. But that's a huge animal, and like, it still gets preyed on today by moose, or not by moose, by wolves. Moose get preyed on by wolves, but it's still crazy to think that like there were safety tigers that would just, a pack of them would just ruin, I guess a pride would just ruin a moose, and it had to get big to survive that, and now they're all gone. So the last one of this is muskox, and I have 2 images for this one because the first image I really liked, but they're in the background. You're kind of like, what's that furry thing? And it's kind of hard to see. So then we have another image of the muskox, which I love muskox. They're really cool. They are more related to goats than cattle. They're like kind of like a sub part of bovidae. They're like related to tackins and mountain goats. Tackins are pretty cool. Look them up. So muskox, Ice Age tank. You have thick coat. They make the defensive circle, kind of like how Triceratops, we used to think they'd do it. They do a defensive circle. They also have a crazy tolerance for cold. Like, they are cold weather survivors. They've changed so little that watching them today feels like you're peeking through a window into the Pleistocene. And the Pleistocene was like, to think about like massive herds of muskox. Like, not, you think about like Discovery Channel now and there's maybe like, I don't know, 10, 11 of them. Picture like a herd of like 20 or 30. That's a huge number of animals. And you have Smilodons preying on them and following them. And this pack is like chasing them down. And this pack is made for killing these things. And now they're gone. So you have wolves preying on young muskox, but nothing really preys on big muskox. Maybe a polar bear, maybe. Now, we're into part 2, because that's kind of like what didn't change. Part 2 is animals that changed socially and not anatomically. So their mindset, if you want to call it mindset, or the way they lived their lives shifted due to kind of how things were. So I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, and Justin's going to hear this tangent again for the second time. So we're going to talk about elephants, and I have 2 pictures of elephants. We have African elephants, and then we have Asian elephants. And when you look at African elephants and look at Asian elephants, oh, wow, they're elephants. They're pachyderms, like, look at them. They look so cool. They're so Dumbo. Oh, wow, we love Dumbo. I gotta use my hands for this too. So, woolly, oh, there goes Lancelot. You have woolly mammoths, right? Woolly mammoths and Columbian mammoths. I think I have a picture of Columbian mammoth. I don't think I put it in there. Maybe. I don't know. Justin, if you find it. No, I didn't put it in there. Okay, I didn't get a picture of Columbian mammoth. My bad. So you have these mammoths that are so much, well, they're bigger than modern day elephants, right? They're here. Then you have Paleoloxodon, which I didn't get a picture of Paleoloxodon either because there's not a lot of free use Paleoloxodons. A gigantic elephant, probably the biggest elephant ever to live, well, we know it was, and possibly the largest mammal ever, which is crazy. So Paleoloxodon, taller than a T-Rex, about the same height as Paraceratherium, which is the largest rhino to ever live, but weighed more. So Paraceratherium, and Paleoloxodon, huge. Paleoloxodon, woolly mammoth, both big elephants. Then you have Asian elephants and African elephants. And they're African bush elephants, which are like 2, and then Asian elephants. Asian elephants are more related to mammoths and than African elephants, and African elephants are more related to Paleoloxodon. But they're all related. We know that mammoths could interbreed, Columbian mammoths and like normal woolly mammoths could interbreed. But we have 3 species of elephant today, and they're more related to dead elephants than they are to each other, which I thought was so crazy. So speaking of elephants, obviously, elephants. African bush elephant, didn't get a picture of that one. Body plan's pretty much the exact same as the Ice Age relatives. But here's the behavioral thing. So they're more cautious. Obviously, human intervention really wiped out the mammoths, we think. So behaviorally, they're more cautious. They avoid areas. We know that like elephants are super intelligent and they mourn and they have like great memories. So they will avoid areas. Certain routes that they know have been issues in the past, they will just outright avoid. That's no more for me. And they pass down fear through generations. Elephants panic at the sound of bees. They have really a lot of issues with bees. And it might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure guinea fowl also like freaked them out. So they didn't really change anatomically. Like their bodies didn't change, but their mindset really did, which is really cool. Then we have deer. I have a picture of a white-tailed deer. So species like the white-tailed deer are anatomically similar to their Ice Age counterparts, but, and here comes the but, instead of being more daytime animals, they're more nocturnal now. They avoid open spaces unless it's at night. They also can alter their rut timing. So rut is when they kind of like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go see a lady deer. So they change the rut, and when the bucks are fighting for does, they change that based on if it's a human-dominated area, which is such a cool concept because these animals had to learn to survive. So the predator pressure for deer didn't disappear; it just changed. It became us. And to think of it, I can't picture a white-tailed deer running around with a smile on. That to me is like just so crazy. And last but not least, for the things that changed mentally, not physically, we have the red fox, which is just, I love this picture of the red fox. He looks mischievous. Look at him. He knows some things. He's like, yeah, look at me. The red fox existed across Ice Age Eurasia and North America. Funny enough, though, it still has the same skeleton. It changed its strategies a bit. Now they're more like scavengers. They can thrive in cities better. But they've been here forever. And their behavior actually changed faster than evolution, so they didn't have to evolve. They already had what worked for them, so they just didn't. They just were like, hey, instead of eating birds' eggs and, having to eat, newborn offspring of smaller animals in the wild, we can just do it in cities. Oh, so nothing's changed. No. So we have, again, pigeons are notorious for making terrible nests. So, hey, there's all kinds of eggs. Or, raiding chicken farms. Nothing changed for them, so they just kept going. But again, thinking of a red-tailed fox running around beside a short-faced bear. That is crazy. Let me talk about ghost adaptations, which is part 3, and I love this. So we had ghost adaptations, and it's the haunting part of what this is. So ghost adaptations are traits that evolved for a pressure that no longer exists, but it persists because it's not harmful. So it might kind of sounds confusing, but basically it's a feature that doesn't help you to survive, but doesn't hinder you. So it takes more time to get rid of it than it does to just keep it going. Talk about pronghorn. I love pronghorn, one of the only antelope species in North America. So pronghorn can run nearly 60 miles per hour. Like 60 miles, you're looking at I don't know, it's like 90 kilometers per hour. What in North America can catch that? Nothing here could pick up that. Oh, okay, Justin apparently could outrun a pronghorn. All right. Sure. So, with no living North American predators aside from Justin, why would the pronghorn evolve to be this quick? And then we get to the American cheetah, Mira Sinonyx. And Mira Sinonyx, I want to shout out Mauricio Anton for this beautiful artwork. You can see the pronghorn has kind of changed. The antlers, or I guess the horns, are a little different. But that's a North American cheetah. Where are they today? Oh, they're gone. Those ravens, side note, those ravens, probably the same ravens as today. Just going to show, ravens haven't changed much either. You're going to notice that I'm not going to mention crocodiles or alligators or sharks. I kept this to mostly land-dwelling animals because sharks rolled in trees and crocodiles outlasted the dinosaurs. So we think that Mira Sinonyx, which is the American cheetah, died out 12,000 years ago. So it's been gone. It's been not on this earth for 12,000 years. But pronghorn can still run faster than anyone on earth, except for Justin, on a good day. So their bodies are still tuned to race that ended millions of years ago. Like, they don't have to do race. It says a millennia. I wrote down millennia, but it's not a millennia. Then we have bison again. Now I have this picture of this herding bison. It's kind of hard to see. I think it's actually a farm because you can see ear tags, but it doesn't really matter. So bison still form tight defensive herds. Wolves aren't going to do much against a bison herd that big. They're bison. They're humongous. They're like one of the biggest North American animals we have. A pack of gray wolves aren't going to do much. But when you think about the fact that if they were bison and they had and Smilodon, and I have a picture of a dire wolf as well. I have a little size thing. This is from Prehistoric Wildlife. I love Prehistoric Wildlife. As you can see, Canis dirus, dire wolf, Canis lupus, gray wolf, they look very similar. Now, the note that kind of cut off says that this is only from certain body parts. We think dire wolves were a little bigger, more stocky, stronger jaws. That being said, they could take down bigger prey, but that's another reason why the gray wolves won, is because, gray wolves don't need to eat a whole bison to survive, while we think dire wolves had to eat a whole bison to survive. Then I want to mention one of my favorite Ice Age predators ever, Arctodus, the short-faced bear. This thing was amazing. I love Arctodus. Look at that. Look at this monster. 3 meters tall. Could push anything off a carcass. Could run down a bison himself. Look at this monster. Looks like he's kind of dancing there too. Arctodus was an absolute beast. And when you have stuff like that you're dealing with, you have to have a pack mentality or a herd mentality to survive. Bison on their own would not be able to survive like an Arctodus. It would just ruin them. And then Arctodus, we think too, is like one of like the most dominating predators of the time, because it was probably kleptoparasitic, which is really cool. Kleptoparasitic is a cool thing to say, because it basically was so big and so mean, it would just show up and say, hey, you killed that bison, I want it. And you might, like, there's 5, dire wolves. I can kill at least half of you and still be okay, but you can't kill me. So either get off the carcass and give it to me, or we can try this dance. And most of the time they just said, hey, you win, man. We don't want nothing. Hey, no smoke. So then we also have like modern day wolves, as we talked about. Like, they're pretty formidable, but again, nothing compared to these things. Also, you're gonna notice I don't have any pictures of Smilodon. I could not find any really good pictures of Smilodon that had like credit to the artist, or that weren't like just skull or like skeletons. Then I want to mention giraffes. Shout out giraffes. They're tall, they're beautiful, they're weird. Giraffes used to look more like deer, or kind of like more like moose. And then obviously they got really long necks. How'd that happen? So we think, at least an idea of it, is the height obviously helps spotting predators. If you're that tall, you can see over much. It also helps for dietary issues, because you can outreach other herbivores and eat the tastier stuff at the top. It also makes it so easy. Like, if you have like I don't even know if giraffes like snort or make a noise, but if you're in a herd of giraffes, let's picture a larger amount of giraffes, and you have an Arctodus sneaking up, or a pack of Smilodons, or something along those lines, and you see it long before it can actually get close to you, that you can signal that ability, and then the herd can take off and can run, and you can get away. So yes, we know realistically, ecologically, giraffes evolved to get taller necks so they could eat choicer plants, kind of like how acacia trees, we think, kind of evolved to compete with herbivores. It also helps for predation, because if you're so tall and you can run fast, nothing can stop you. Then I want to just kind of talk about part 4, which is what was hunting them. So this is the kind of part where I talk about how these modern day animals had to deal with these predators. And again, I already mentioned dire wolf and Arctodus. But one thing I love, so we had Arctodus simus, which is the short-faced bear, 2,200 pounds, 2,200 pounds. That could take a moose really easily. It has 700 pounds on a moose. That's a monster. But then I want to talk about Panthera atrox, which is so cool, which is larger than American lions. And Panthera atrox is the North American lion. So we got a picture of that. It's kind of like I forgot to resize this. It looks nice. So number 1 is Panthera atrox. Then we have Panthera leo fossilis, which I think is just another type of early lion. Panthera leo spelea, which is the Eurasian cave lion. And then Panthera leo, which is the modern day African lion. 1, 2, and 3 are much stockier than modern. You think of modern day lions, they are huge. Like this does nothing to the scale. That lion, if it stands up to like tackle you or jump on you, is bigger than you are. Panthera atrox was bigger than that. So when you have all these animals in North America, like again, obviously you can see like the Eurasian cave lion wasn't in America, but the American lion was. So that's why you have to have herds of bison to survive these things. Lions nowadays can kill Cape buffalo. When you have a lion that's much bigger and you're a bison, you have to be able to compete with that by having more members, which is just so cool. Then, as I said, dire wolves, obviously. Then there's ambush specialists like Smilodon. We know that Smilodon, for the most part, were usually, well, I guess I say we think they were more solitary, fewer of them. Like a pride would be maybe like 3 or 4, maybe like a family group, not a gigantic pride like they are nowadays. But Smilodon were like adept at using those teeth to just pierce. And like when you think about that, it's kind of crazy to think that how insane that was. So when you think of like what they had to deal with, it's crazy. There was no safe strategy. When you are, a North American moose and you're dealing with a lion that is taller than I am, it's not really, it's like that guy, that guy was maybe like 180 centimeters and taller than that, but it's still huge. And it was crowded. You had so many things you're dealing with. You had so many animals competing. Like when you picture the Ice Age, you picture so many animals. And it's like, you kind of look at like nowadays documentaries, it looks sparse. And it is, but it's not because we've lost numbers of these animals that are still alive. It's we've lost things that filled in the gaps. So to kind of finish off, I want to talk about just the last thing about why modern nature feels kind of quiet. Because this is what I was kind of thinking about. So today we often have 1 to 2 apex predators. We have fragmented herds and broken migration routes in the sense of what they used to migrate for don't exist anymore. Also, I do want to shout out before I mention caribou. Caribou have been around for a long time. I didn't put caribou on this. And echidnas. I wanted to mention echidnas too. And Komodo dragons. Okay, there's a lot that I didn't get pictures of these, but there's a lot of things that survived. Komodo dragons were alive at the same time as Megalania, which was a giant Komodo dragon that could eat, it ate early humans and the African Aborigines on Australia. So the poor Australians had to deal with a giant Komodo dragon. Not very fun. But the Ice Age had redundancies. You had multiple predators filling the same niche because it had to be competitive, because you were evolving at a fast rate. Again, if one predator declined, another one filled that gap. One herbivore disappeared completely or they were wiped out. Something stepped in. You had so many different mouths that are all eating out of the same pot that you had to have so much competition. So currently we have like this interaction density. Look at the African savanna. It looks busy, but it was busier at one point. We lost ecological traffic. Again, you don't have Bering Land Straits where you have, all these animals migrating across a land bridge. You don't have that anymore. Those are gone. So you don't have herds of, macrochemia going south to South America anymore. That doesn't happen. So it does change things. You got to think Ice Age was louder, tenser, and full of motion. Like every time it was a struggle. And that's why I think today, nature's it's not empty. It's just simplified. Those things that needed to survive, they don't need that anymore. They're gone. And those hyper predators aren't here anymore because it can't sustain them. And at the end, I want to just say, when you see a moose, when you see a pronghorn, when you see a bison, an ostrich, you see a giraffe, you got to think, even an echidna, how long have they been here for? And I think it's just so cool. You're not seeing an animal You're seeing adaptations that no longer exist, but did for a reason. And I think that is such a cool thing. I wrote down here, and I kind of I used a little bit of help for this. I just kind of find keywords to kind of end it off. And what I kind of crafted was evolution doesn't erase ghosts. It just keeps walking forward. And that is such a cool thing. Evolution doesn't stop. And yeah, so with that, I want to thank you so much for being here. Obviously, I didn't wear the dinosaur head today because I was talking about prehistoric animals. So I'm no dinosaur head today, but it's here in spirit and physically here as well. So with that being said, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. My name's Eldin Atkin. Hopefully I'll be back sooner than later, but in these fleeting moments I have with you, I really hope that you enjoy and that you learn something from today. So I'll catch you next time, whenever that is. And this has been Dino, only on riotradio.ca.